What if, man, is the question of the hour. What if javelinas raided this home and took all our foodstuffs? Answer: kill the javelinas and make some sweet ass bacon.
Damn.
But that's
I was
not the
thinking
question of
soup.
the hour. No, the question of the hour is: what if Superman,
Was a
became-
javelina.
was a javelina who crash landed on Earth and became like this inadvertent but willing savior? Instead of that, what if he was just like a killing machine?
Yeah. Be screwed.
What would you do, man?
Die.
I'll tell you what you would do. You'd call Batman because Batman was right, bitches.
Yeah, dude.
Look, I'm just saying
Batman
that
would always beat him somehow.
Brightburn just proved why Batman was fucking insane in Batman vs. Superman, in
Yeah.
case you didn't get it the first time, which was pretty obvious. But anyway, we just watched Brightburn, the movie that, was basically the result of James Gunn getting a bunch of, clout because of what he'd done at Marvel. And so he just, let his family do shit now, apparently. So
Yeah.
that's cool. So if you're a Gunn family member, you're in good. Or potentially bad.
Yeah.
I don't know how this movie did, but
Did alright, I think.
yeah. So we saw it, and basically the gist of this movie is, as aforementioned, what if Superman turned out to be bad? What if, man? Or should I say, Elseworlds?
Yeah.
Not really a
'cause
question.
You can't say what if, dude.
So yeah,
Disney
man.
just struck this video down.
That's the scenario, plain and simple, and the setup all falls in line with that. You got your basic parallels to the Kents and your Lana Langs and all that jazz. So if you're not a comic book fan or at least somewhat aware of what the backstory is, then this film might kind of leave you in the dark a little bit because it depends on that. It depends on you knowing, the basics of Superman lore, which granted,
Like
a
99%.
lot of people know. A lot of people know,
I'll
but
say 89%.
that's too big a number. But a lot of
55.
people know the basics, but there's people that don't know the basics. So if I had to throw a big negative out there, it's that there's a portion of the audience that's gonna be like, yeah, this is some bare bones shit. I don't understand the motivations here or why. But if you are in that percentage that at least has a somewhat loose grasp of what's going on with Superman, then it depends on that. Now you call that a crutch, or you call that a necessity given the subject matter, but it is kind of weak writing, so I'm just gonna have to call it out there. The proper thing to do would be to develop the story and the characters appropriately, and you don't have to lose that parallel. You could just do it in a way that benefits the characters and the story. They didn't do that. They just kind of dropped you in the midst of it and gave you these parallel situations that are driven by what you know. Is that necessarily a movie breaking negative? No, I'm just saying it is a negative, and we're just gonna call it straight. Put it out there like a card.
Like a javelina.
So, get that out of the way. Let's talk about this movie, Brightburn. Hit me with
Does
it.
it burn bright in your book?
That was horrible. I wish I could just destroy you right now for the rest of the world. But no, anyway, tell me what you think about this, man. There was some buzz behind this because it was potentially an alternative to, what the standard is now for superhero fare. And if you're looking for an alternative, I suppose it is that in some senses, but not in the strictest sense, as in this is not some horror movie, ultra gory version of the MCU. No, it is much more a horror-oriented film than a superhero film.
Yeah.
So there's that to take into consideration. However, what did you think about it? Or what were your expectations? Were they met? Was it something different? And something else was satisfied? Give me your take.
I think, that's the biggest takeaway is that it's kind of more of a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
Horror movie, I guess. It takes the horror structure and goes with it. I think I liked it.
Okay. We're going on suppositions now. Like, I think it was good.
No, I think I enjoyed it, for the most part. I do think there was a couple things that they could have done more
Mm-hmm.
to, help it reach its potential. but I liked it.
Yeah. I'm kind of in the same boat. I like the movie a bit, but it's not a perfect movie.
Mm.
I think a lot of the character work for the beginning portion of the film is sloppy.
Yeah.
And part of it, look, I read some reviews where they were like, the kid just doesn't work. I'm kind of 50-50 there. I think the actor himself is not a great actor. Portraying the kid here, Brandon Briers. He's just not a good actor, period. And however, some of the reviews I read were like he's too stiff and monotone. That was intentional.
Yeah.
It's just that he's not good at portraying that. So kind of like the reasoning behind the evil. There's an allegorical element to the reasoning behind him being evil. The story, the narrative part of that is that he is inherently evil. No amount of nurturing, which is a big part of the Superman character, he was nurtured into being a good person. That's why he chooses to be a savior. You know, that element is taken out of the picture with this movie. This is a kid that was destined to be a destroyer of worlds.
Yeah.
That is his destiny. He cannot shake it. However, the writers put in an allegorical element or a parallel element there to align it with his coming of age, his puberty. So there's that going on there too. You know, there's an allegory there at this tumultuous time in a child's life where you can become anything. However, I question the use of doing that, given that there is no alternative to this kid. They kind of introduced that with him, the shreds of humanity in him being linked to his parents and him losing that. But at that point, he was really just making excuses to keep his parents around. He was hell-bent on destroying the world, period. So I don't know how effective that was, or if it was just a matter of how ineffective the writing was. Whatever the case, the character work at the beginning was a little shaky. Some things were not communicated exactly as they were intended, or if they were kind of, a little on the not hammy side, but it came a little like soft blows or too hard. It was either or. There was no balance going on there. So I'm just pointing that out. It's not necessarily, again, a movie breaking thing for me, but it is something I noticed, and I was like, well, that could have been done better, personally speaking.
Yes.
Okay. There's that to consider. There's definitely something there. If you notice that, if it bothers you, yeah, it could potentially break the movie for you. It didn't me. Because again, as a comic book fan, there is a lot to enjoy here. You could see how they're playing against type at times, and that in itself is enjoyable. And you could see when they're leaning into the type and how they're alternatively leaning into that. And that, again, is enjoyable to see that. It's why comic fans pick up issues of What If, or in the case of DC, Elseworlds. We want to see an alternative take. And we already know all the background stuff. We just want to see how else it plays. And this movie leans in heavy into that, as I've mentioned. So a lot of these faults that I'm pointing out are because of that. This literally should have just been like, just go to DC and produce this and slap a What If on it. That way, Elseworlds. That way, all these problems, quote unquote, can just be ushered away with like, look, we already know what we need to know. This is just like an alternative take. And that's exactly what this plays as. So I'm kind of loath to say that that's a negative, because that's exactly how this fucking movie was written. Like, again, with this, you come in with this foreknowledge. So does that limit his audience? Yeah, kind of. But I don't know. Maybe it will find an audience outside of that particular fandom or that knowledge base or whatever. Give me something, man. Anything positive or negative?
I do think that you kind of mentioned it a little.
Mm-hmm.
That at one point it does just kind of come off as an excuse to keep the movie going, where you're just like, dude, just kill these people already. Because he plays a lot with the people.
Yeah.
And at first you're like, all right, that's his thing. But towards the end, you're like, you start questioning why he doesn't just kill him.
Yeah, the only real people with an excuse are his parents.
Yeah.
And there's a really good scene between his father and him where his father tries to dispose of him. That's a really good scene. You know, but yeah, you wonder about some of the other elements. Now, there isn't a proper explanation given the terms of the kid's psychology. He still was raised among humans. So he feels hurt when people do things to him. So he's vindictive towards them.
They give like hints that it's like some sort of weird call that he's come into. So he was still raised human. They do mention that this is kind of a new change for him. So that makes sense. It just kind of doesn't come across that well.
Yeah, which is what I said previously. You know, again, you inherently as a viewer understand what they're getting at. You know, yes, he has been. You know, the coming of age triggered this call, his purpose to destroy a world. However, he was raised as a human, so you know that element does come into play. Plus the puberty thing, just as real puberty does, heightens all kinds of emotions and stuff. So there's a reason for him to basically play with his prey, but much like the problem with the real Superman, you're like, why? Just do it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So the inherent problems of Superman, the character, come into Superman, or I'm sorry, anti-Superman here, and like, would you just fucking do it already? You know what I'm saying?
Except I think Superman has a better excuse for not just killing people and shit.
Yeah, because Superman, again, is given a more complex reason to be the way he is. This guy's just, he's a bad guy, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's it, you know, so there is a little bit of shallowness to the character, which necessarily didn't have to be the case, you know. I think if they would have played this more as an inner struggle between his humanity.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing that I think was kind of missing, is that I guess they just wanted to go into the whole like he's into it thing, but that doesn't even really come across that well until maybe towards the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that it's like some involuntary call that he's in by this weird thingy. They could have played that up to an interesting degree, and having the parents be like the concrete tie to his humanity. That would have been interesting. Maybe the kid wasn't good enough, and they were like, "Oh, dude, can we not do that?"
No, that was the original script. So yeah, it would have been far more interesting to play in, you know, like a psychological battle between that human side of him and the side that is predestined to destroy the world.
Yeah.
You could have still kept it a horror movie. You could have still ended it on the down, you know, sour note, because predestined, hello, he would have just lost the inner struggle, but they didn't do that. Instead, he's just outright bad, and the progression from him being just a kid to being bad is so quick and sudden. And I get it. It's because of the puberty thing. It's supposed to be that allegorical element. I get it. But it's not portrayed well enough, and you don't see into his inner world enough to feel that it's a convincing progression from a good kid to an outright destroyer of worlds.
Yeah.
You know, you're just told it, and it doesn't really come across 100% well, you know, for lack of better words. So there is that to consider. Any other negatives you want to point out? I got a negative in case you can't think of one.
Okay.
I think there's some shots in this movie that are cool, but they're just there for cool sake.
Yeah.
You're like, you don't need that shot. Just fucking have him do something. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't need the cool and it's not an earned cool shot either. You're not like, oh, hell yeah. We like the fact that that's there because it built up to that. No, it's just kind of like, well, that looks cool, but why? Why is he hovering outside the window for no reason? Which
plays into my, like, why the playing thing, where it's just kind of like, they show it in cool ways, but it's kind of like, why is he doing this?
Yeah, I heard plane at first as well.
Playing, not playing. There's actually a plane in this, so I get why you're confused.
So, there's moments where you're like, okay, why? Again, the plane thing I can kind of forgive because he's hurt, he's feeling vindictive. The human side of him is playing into it, but at other times, including some of those times, you're like, all right, why are you standing there? The one that stands out the most is like his mom. He's at home with his mom. She hears him because he's about to go attack someone. and he's hovering outside her window creepily.
Yeah.
With this costume he's built, I guess. The costume just comes out of nowhere, by the way. And he's hovering outside the window, and you're like, all right, well, we get the creepy vibe, all right. But then the next place he shows up, he doesn't have the costume on anymore. So like, why'd you even put on the costume? If you weren't gonna be seen by your mom, then why put on the costume? Just fucking hover outside her fucking window, just plain ass, and go to the place just plain ass. Then I guess when you're gonna kill someone, put on her costume. I guess, you know, it just kind of didn't add up. Like, why? Why did we need that? Other than it looked kind of cool or creepy or whatever. There's some moments like that are spotted throughout this fucking movie that make you question that. Like, what? Okay, I guess that's a thing. So that would be another negative for me. Yeah, you got any other?
I like that there's at least a hint that it's like something bigger going on. That's cool. Though not really elaborated on, which is good. It would have been kind of... No, well, it could have been interesting, but I don't think it would have benefited the movie anymore just to, you know, do an MCU and just explain everything.
Yeah.
So that's cool. You even see it at the end where you kind of see that it's happening in other places, which is kind of rad. So that's cool. It has like a bigger feeling than it should.
Yeah. This is definitely a jumping off point movie. There was definitely an intent to build on this.
It's Sony, so of course.
Yeah, so those elements actually work well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they make you want to know more about what is going on and why. It's played exactly like in Batman vs. Superman. So anybody that hated that but liked it here, why?
Yeah.
Or vice versa, I guess. But you know, yeah, it's that idea that there's something bigger going on in the world. And this is just the Superman, anti-Superman version of it. And on top of that, it does play as a pseudo-origin story, albeit an abbreviated one. Again, playing off that idea that we already kind of know the basics of the Superman story, so that just kind of fills in the gaps for us. And I can't stress how helpful that is, and yet an impediment it is. Like, why would you just not fill in the gaps for us? You know, there's a way to do it interestingly and originally still. You know, it's a story told 1,000 times, but you're actually telling it in a different way that gives you an excuse to tell it again.
Yeah.
So, odd choice, but I get it. Maybe they just didn't have a big ass enough budget, or they just wanted to make it a quick and nasty little thing. I don't know. But, yeah, that is cool. That's a cool element. They do, thankfully, allow enough mystery around what the reasoning for this purpose is, or I'm sorry, the reason for his purpose as a destroyer is. They do keep that kind of a mystery.
Yeah.
And that's cool because it does leave you wanting more. It does leave, in a good way. It does leave you wanting to explore this character more. So I would say that while it does trip up at times at the beginning, by the end, this thing does come full force and, you know, leave you with a good taste in your mouth versus kind of like a lukewarm one that, had it continued on the path that began with, it would have left me with. By the end, I was like, all right, I want to see more of this world. I want to see more of this character, only maybe written better.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing for sure. A lot of the imagery in this is pretty cool. There's some really good scenes, and there's some really good stuff that plays off of comic book tropes and standards very well, and stuff that plays against those comic book tropes and standards very well. Of course, big talking point for a lot of people is the introduction of graphic violence to the equation. Was that something that you were keen with or not? Because apparently people get offended at the very idea that heroes cause damage. Guess what? They do. It's a thing. Now here you're just seeing it. But anyway.
I like a good gore.
Cut to a bull tearing you apart.
Oh man, I wish I could. Oh man, I want to see that. Anyway, there's surprisingly not an insane amount of gore in this.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of save it till, you know, certain key points, which is fine. I do think that the effects are pretty good. Like the jaw javelina, that was pretty good effect. I think I can't think of any gore effects that look like shit. and they were pretty cool looking.
Yeah, all the gore stuff is surprisingly subdued, despite it being gore. And you know what? And this is where him playing with his prey is kind of excused a little bit again. He's not so much portrayed at this point as this full-on destructor yet. This is his nascent stages.
Yeah.
We get the full-on destructor stuff in the credit sequences when he's graduated from this initial nascent stage. Here he's portrayed more as a serial killer, down to leaving, his calling card behind in every shot. So the gore plays into that quite well, basically, what if a superhero was a super killer is kind of that idea or that they're playing with. And in that aspect, that playing with the prey element does excuse the, why it's happening. You still are, you still think like, come on, man, you're just a fucking super powerful ass kid. Just kill everyone in town already. But it does excuse it a little bit if you're going to be somewhat fair. Now, I do like that it turned. Again, it leans into tropes at times, and it goes against them at others, and that's good because it always kind of keeps you guessing where they're going to go. And just when you think they're going to go this way, oh, guess what? We're going to actually do this, and that's neat, man. That's really cool. Sometimes they go with the tropes, sometimes they don't, and you just don't know where or when. And I do like that this was, as you would expect from something more horror oriented, a little, a little bit of a fucking fucked up ending there. So that's cool. That's cool. It's kind of both. It leans into the horror trope, but it leans away from the superhero comic trope. So it's playing to both audiences in a distinct way. I like that, man. I like that, especially given that his parents are very likable characters.
Yeah.
They're really who you're rooting for in this whole movie. Even when sometimes, maybe they're a bit too negligent of what's going on. But just when I was thinking that, then, they step up their game. Yeah. So it's really that second half of the movie that really fixes a lot of the issues that I had with it. But or makes me overlook some of the issues with it. And that's exactly when that happens, that turning point for the parents. So there is that as well. But anyway.
Yes.
You got anything else?
I'm trying to think of what to say, and I'm drawing a blank.
This is a good sign.
Yeah.
There are a lot of decent effects in this movie. Some work very well, and some don't. Like some of the flying is like that's just a fucking CGI thing.
It's mainly when he flies towards the camera.
Yeah, or
a lot of that.
Also, kind of when he flies side to side.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't look great, but it doesn't look god awful. At the very, it's not some Superman 4 shit going on here.
The baby was kind of weird.
Yeah, there was the dream sequence with a, evil baby. Basically, it's not good.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they get the message across, and it's not jarringly bad or anything like that. So that's kind of take it as it comes. For the best, I think overall the better effects outweigh the bad ones. So that's the thing to consider. Some of the music in this is pretty cool. Some of it is not very memorable.
Yeah.
It just I guess depends on again the more memorable stuff music wise was in the latter half. So there you go. I am sort of interested to see if there's going to be anything resulting of this movie. I hope so, because they did lay a lot of interesting groundwork. So I can only hope that maybe, they get somebody that can actually write a script better.
Maybe old James can step up and be like, yo, other guns.
Yeah.
Take a back seat.
Do a little something else here. But, again, this is a cool concept. So cool that you kind of forgive a lot of the missteps. That's just the way it is sometimes. Sometimes cool is enough. And in this case, the concept is cool enough for you to forgive a lot of those aforementioned missteps. The cast, for the most part, is really good. Again, the exception being this kid that kind of, just, all right. It could be worse, I guess.
He does have the face of a pervert.
He does. And you know what? They also kind of play into that, again, with the whole puberty angle, which is cool. I mean, you do some fucked up shit when you're in puberty, do weird shit. You make weird decisions, rash decisions. So that was interesting. They do shoot a kid, so that's a big plus for me. Unfortunately, it doesn't pierce his fucking skull, so
0 out of 10.
Negative.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot to like in this movie despite some of its downfalls. But give me any final thoughts and final score on a scale of 1 to 10, again, relative to this type of film. Give it to me.
I think it's an interesting starting point. Hopefully, it does go somewhere. And even if it doesn't, it's an interesting idea and an entertaining enough movie to watch. It's it's one of those that you buy like when it's a little cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely not a full pricer, but I'll say that it was a little bit. I don't want to say it was a little disappointing, but it was a little bit less than I thought they could have done with the premise. But it was still pretty cool. So I'll give it like a. If I'm being real here, I'll give it like a 6.5.
All right.
On a good day, maybe a 7.
And I'm going to mirror that, man. I'm going to give it a 6.5. The premise alone is interesting enough, a reason to visit this movie and check it out. The fact that they don't completely botch it excuses that. I do believe the second half is stronger than the first half and does make up for, some of the trepidations you might have about that first half. Cast is good. Elizabeth Banks is pretty, and I want to totally bang that. But that's beside the point.
You want a Glazer Krispy Kreme?
Definitely. There's a lot of good stuff in here. There's some really good sequences. If you're a comic book fan, you might enjoy this more than your average fan because of what it does with what we know to be comic tropes. And, that's that. If you're a superhero movie fan, this might not be what you expected it to be. This is more about comic books than comic book movies. So there is that. And I do believe the trailer kind of misrepresented certain parts of this movie. Now that didn't have, I'm not one to get all hyped up about a movie to the point where I ruin it. So that had no effect on me. But I know some people out there are that way, where they're like, this is what I want. And this movie will most likely not deliver what it kind of teased it was going to deliver. But I did enjoy large portions of this movie. And like you said, there is stuff in here that it sets up for a potential future project that would be even cooler than it. It's a good starting point, if albeit a flawed one. For that reason, I give it 6.5. Tell us what you thought about this movie. Or if you haven't seen it, check it out and then let us know. Try it, waste your money on something we just told you. Sucks. Why? Because we want you to form your own damn opinion, damn it. That's why.
Yeah, tell us if we're wrong.
Yeah,
fuck it. Be a dickhead about it. Not screw it, be a dickhead. I don't care.
Fuck it. What are we, Boogie?
Yeah.
Anyway, we're fat enough.
It's a good point.
The point is, let us know. Hit like, share, subscribe, and notification buttons, of course, because then fucking YouTube just tank us like it always does. Yeah. Also, we suck. But anyway, the point is, we're out, folks.